The gleaming showroom of prestige motors sparkled under perfectly positioned lighting. Rows of luxury vehicles sat like sleeping beasts, their polished surfaces reflecting the overhead lights. I stood at the entrance, my palms slightly damp with nervous anticipation. At 23 years old, I was certainly the youngest person in the dealership by at least 2 decades. My journey to this moment began 3 years earlier in my college dorm room. While other students spent weekends partying, I hunched over my laptop building my e-commerce business. I started with dropshipping smartphone accessories, reinvesting every dollar of profit. By sophomore year, I had developed my own product line. By junior year, I had 10 employees working remotely. Now, a year after graduation, my company had broken 8 figures in annual revenue. The sales consultant approached with a curious expression. His name tag read Richard, and his tailored suit matched the premium environment. "Can I help you find something today?" His tone carried the slightest hint of doubt about my purpose there. "I am interested in the Rolls-Royce Wraith," I replied, maintaining eye contact despite my nerves. Richard nodded politely but skeptically. "The Wraith is one of our premium offerings. Perhaps you would like to see something in our entry-level selection first." "No, thank you. I have researched extensively. The Wraith is what I came to see." His eyebrows raised slightly before he composed his expression. "Very well, right this way." The vehicle sat in a special corner of the showroom, separated from the others as if in its own royal chamber. Phantom gray exterior with a contrasting red leather interior. The Spirit of Ecstasy hood ornament caught the light, seeming to glow from within. "It is beautiful," I whispered, more to myself than to Richard. The test drive was surreal. The engine purred with restrained power as we glided through city streets. The steering wheel felt substantial in my hands. The leather seat cradled me like nothing I had ever experienced. This was not merely transportation. It was validation of countless nights I had fallen asleep at my desk, of friendships neglected for business calls, of the relentless work that had consumed my early 20s. When we returned to the dealership, Richard seemed to have reassessed me. "What do you think?" he asked, his tone noticeably warmer. "I will take it," I said simply. The paperwork took longer than the decision. Each signature represented years of sacrifice and determination. When Richard finally handed me the keys, their weight felt significant in my palm. "Congratulations," he said, with genuine respect in his voice. "Not many people your age achieve this." 2 weeks later, I drove my new treasure through the ornate gates of Oakwood Estates. The community was known for its privacy, security, and exclusivity, a perfect place for my first home purchase. The Rolls-Royce hummed quietly as I navigated the winding roads lined with immaculate landscaping and impressive homes. Neighbors paused their gardening and dog walking to watch my arrival. Some smiled and waved appreciatively at the beautiful machine. Others stared with undisguised curiosity or furrowed brows. An older man walking his golden retriever actually stopped in his tracks, mouth slightly open. I pulled into the driveway of my new home, a modest but elegant Spanish-style house at the corner of Magnolia and Oakwood Drive. As the garage door opened automatically, I caught sight of a woman across the street watching intensely from her porch. She did not wave or smile, but instead tilted her head and narrowed her eyes before turning to go inside. The garage door closed behind me, and I sat for a moment in the quiet luxury of my car, savoring this milestone. If only I had known that my prized possession would soon become the center of a neighborhood battle that would test not just my patience, but my right to enjoy the fruits of my success. The moving trucks departed by late afternoon, leaving me alone in my new home. Boxes remained stacked in most rooms, but I had managed to assemble my bed and unpack essential kitchen items. I stood in my living room, gazing out at the perfectly manicured community through floor-to-ceiling windows. Oakwood Estates represented everything I had worked for: stability, success, prestige. The doorbell chimed, interrupting my thoughts. Outside stood an older couple, perhaps in their 60s, holding a wicker basket covered with a checkered cloth. "Welcome to the neighborhood," the woman said warmly. "I am Margaret Johnson, and this is my husband, Frank. We live 3 doors down." She extended the basket. "Just some homemade bread and local honey to help you settle in." "Thank you so much. I am Alex," I replied, accepting their gift. "Would you like to come in? I do not have much furniture yet, but I can offer coffee." The Johnsons stepped inside, their eyes widening as they took in the vaulted ceilings and open floor plan. Frank whistled appreciatively. "You have done well for yourself, young man." "Thank you. I worked hard to get here." "And what is it you do exactly?" Margaret asked, her tone friendly but curious. "I own an e-commerce company specializing in customized tech accessories. We started with phone cases and expanded from there." "At your age," Frank's eyebrows shot up, "must be quite the operation." "It is. I started in college and grew it over the last few years." "And that beautiful car in your garage, that must have cost—" Margaret trailed off, clearly uncomfortable discussing money directly. "It was a reward to myself for reaching a business milestone," I explained, maintaining my smile despite the probing questions. The conversation continued pleasantly enough, though I noticed their glances at each other when I mentioned my business success. They were polite, but clearly surprised by my circumstances. Similar interactions followed over the next few days. Mrs. Garcia from next door brought cookies. The Patels from across the park invited me to dinner. Most neighbors were welcoming, though I consistently noticed furrowed brows when they learned my age. The community was predominantly established professionals in their 40s and 50s, with a few retirees mixed in. At 23, I was an anomaly. The first time I drove the Rolls-Royce to the grocery store, I returned to find 2 neighbors standing near my driveway, conversation stopping abruptly as I approached. Each time I took the car out, whether to get groceries or meet clients, I felt eyes following the vehicle. The Wraith was not just transportation, it had become a neighborhood spectacle. At the community mailboxes one afternoon, I encountered an older gentleman sorting through his mail. He introduced himself as Dr. Thompson, retired neurosurgeon. "That is quite a car for someone so young," he commented without preamble. "What exactly do you do for a living that affords such luxury?" The question was becoming familiar, but his tone carried more skepticism than curiosity. "I own an e-commerce business," I replied simply, not feeling obligated to detail my journey. He responded, looking unconvinced. "And your parents, are they in business as well?" "My parents are teachers in Ohio. This is entirely my business." "Remarkable," he said, though his expression suggested he found it improbable rather than impressive. Walking home with my mail, I noticed several curtains twitching in windows along the street. Was I being paranoid, or was I under neighborhood surveillance? Through my living room window that evening, I observed a middle-aged woman with immaculately highlighted blonde hair and designer casual wear standing on her porch across the park. She wore white capri pants, a navy blue blouse, and had arms crossed as she tracked my movements around my front yard as I checked my new landscaping. Her stance communicated disapproval rather than friendly interest. The next day, while collecting my newspaper, I overheard snippets of conversation from 2 women power walking past my house. "Did you see that car?" I know. Do you really think someone that young could afford it legitimately? Trust fund, maybe, or something shadier. Their voices faded as they continued down the street, but their words lingered. I had never expected to defend my success rather than celebrate it. Later that week, I received a community newsletter in my mailbox. Inside was a welcome letter from the Homeowners Association, signed by the president, Brenda Miller. The attached photo showed the same blonde woman I had noticed watching my house. Her smile in the photo did not reach her eyes, which seemed to evaluate rather than welcome. I would soon discover that Brenda Miller was not just the HOA president, but the self-appointed community gatekeeper. Her narrowed eyes and grim expression suggested she had already made judgments about me and my beautiful car, judgments that would soon escalate into a community conflict I never anticipated when choosing this seemingly perfect neighborhood. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather, clear blue skies, and a gentle breeze that rustled the ornamental pear trees lining my driveway. I decided it was the ideal day to give the Rolls-Royce its first proper hand wash since moving in. I gathered my premium cleaning supplies, microfiber cloths, pH-neutral soap specifically designed for luxury vehicles, and a new set of detailing brushes. The Wraith gleamed even under a thin layer of dust, its phantom gray paint catching the sunlight as I carefully positioned it in the driveway. I filled a bucket with warm water, added the precise amount of soap, and began the methodical process of washing my prized possession. The rhythmic click of heels against concrete interrupted my concentration. The sound grew louder, approaching deliberately. I looked up to see a woman walking directly toward me with purpose in her stride. Her blonde, highlighted hair was styled in an immaculate bob, her white capri pants and navy blouse pressed to perfection. A clipboard was clutched to her chest like armor. I recognized her immediately from the newsletter photo, Brenda Miller, HOA president. "Good morning," she called out, her voice carrying across the yard with practiced authority. Her smile appeared practiced as well, not reaching her eyes. "You must be our newest resident." I straightened up, wiping my hands on a towel. "Yes, Alex Chen, nice to meet you." Brenda Miller, Homeowners Association president. She extended a manicured hand which I shook briefly. Her gaze drifted to the Rolls-Royce, lingering on its distinctive lines. "That is certainly attention-grabbing." Her tone conveyed that this was not a compliment. I nodded politely, but offered no response, waiting to see where she was heading with this observation. "We do not see many vehicles of this caliber in Oakwood Estates," she continued, tilting her head slightly. "It is quite flashy for our community aesthetic." "It is a beautiful car," I replied neutrally. "I have dreamed of owning one since I was 15. Brenda's perfectly penciled eyebrows arched. "And now you have one at, how old are you exactly?" 23. Her expression shifted to one of undisguised skepticism. 23. How remarkable. And what is it you do to afford such a luxury at your age, if you do not mind my asking? The question was delivered with a smile that suggested friendly curiosity, but her tone implied suspicion. This was becoming a pattern in my interactions here. "I own an e-commerce business. We specialize in customized tech accessories and have expanded into several related product lines." "An online business," she nodded slowly. "How modern. And this business is successful enough to purchase a car that costs more than most homes in America." The question hung in the air, loaded with implication. My temperature rose slightly despite the mild morning. "Yes, it is quite successful. I built it from the ground up during college." Her response dripped with disbelief, And you operate this business from home. Partially. We have office space downtown, but I do work from home several days a week. Brenda made a show of writing something on her clipboard. You know, Mr. Chen, Oakwood Estates has very specific regulations about home-based businesses. We do not permit commercial activities that generate unusual traffic or disrupt the residential character of our community. My business does not generate any traffic here, I clarified. My presence is entirely residential. She looked pointedly at the Rolls-Royce. This vehicle does create a certain impression. We strive to maintain community standards that reflect our values of modesty and good taste. The implication that my car violated standards of good taste stung more than I expected. Is there an actual HOA rule about what kind of cars residents can own? I asked, struggling to keep my tone neutral. Not specifically, she admitted, but we do have regulations about maintaining community aesthetic standards. Vehicles kept in driveways should not disrupt neighborhood harmony. I see. I gestured to the half-washed car. Is washing my own car on my own property disruptive to neighborhood harmony? Her lips tightened slightly. Of course not, but it does draw attention. Attention leads to questions. Questions like how someone barely out of college affords a vehicle that costs upward of $300,000 without family money, or, she paused meaningfully, other activities. The implication hung in the air between us. My hands tightened around the cloth I was holding. My business is entirely legitimate, Mrs. Miller. I have worked extremely hard for everything I have. I am sure you believe that. Her smile returned, practiced and cold. Just be aware that our community values its privacy and reputation. We have many distinguished residents, doctors, lawyers, executives, who chose Oakwood Estates precisely because it is not flashy or attention-seeking. I appreciate your concern, I replied, maintaining my composure despite the growing frustration. But I have every right to own this car and park it at my home. Rights come with responsibilities in a covenant community, Mr. Chen. She glanced again at her clipboard. I would suggest familiarizing yourself thoroughly with our HOA regulations. You will find them quite comprehensive. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and do be mindful of our street parking restrictions. Vehicles may not remain on the street overnight, and guest parking is limited to 48 hours without special permission. The car will be in my garage or driveway, I assured her. Wonderful. Welcome to Oakwood Estates, Mr. Chen. I do hope you will fit in. With that parting comment, she elked away, heels clicking rhythmically on the concrete. I stood in my own driveway with soap suds dripping from my hands, feeling as though I had just been issued a warning rather than welcome to the neighborhood. I returned to washing my car, but the joy had evaporated from the task. Each careful stroke of the cloth felt defensive now, rather than proud. How had my achievement become something suspicious rather than celebrated? And what exactly had Brenda Miller been writing on that clipboard? 1 week after my encounter with Brenda, I returned home from a business meeting to find a crisp white envelope stuck to my front door. The HOA logo was prominently displayed in the corner, a stylized oak tree with the words Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association printed beneath it. My stomach tightened as I removed the envelope and stepped inside. The letter inside was formal, printed on heavy bond paper with the HOA letterhead. It read, Dear Mr. Chen, it has come to the attention of the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association Board that your vehicle may be in violation of community guidelines regarding neighborhood aesthetic standards, Section 7.3 of the Covenant. Additionally, Concerns have been raised about potential business activities being conducted from your residence that may violate our restrictions on home-based businesses. Section 4.2. The vehicle in question, a Rolls-Royce Wraith, disrupts neighborhood harmony and raises concerns about illicit activity due to its incongruence with the age and apparent circumstances of the owner. You are hereby requested to attend the next HOA board meeting on the 15th to address these concerns. Documentation regarding the legitimate source of funds for this vehicle and clarification about your business activities will be required. Sincerely, Brenda Miller, President, Oakwood Estates HOA. I read the letter twice, my hands shaking slightly with a mixture of anger and disbelief. The accusation was thinly veiled but unmistakable. The HOA, or more specifically Brenda, suspected criminal activity based solely on my age and the car I drove. I had carefully reviewed the HOA covenant before purchasing my home and knew there were no specific restrictions against luxury vehicles. The next day, I decided to visit the community pool to clear my head. As I approached the gate, I noticed a group of residents lounging in the seating area. Their conversation stopped abruptly when I entered, replaced by pointed glances and whispers behind hands. I nodded politely and found a chair at the opposite end of the pool area. A teenage boy swam to the edge of the pool near my chair, looking at me with unabashed curiosity. "Are you the guy with the Rolls-Royce?" he asked bluntly. "Yes, that is my car," I replied. "Cool." He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Is it true you run a money laundering operation? That is what my dad heard at the golf club." My blood ran cold. "What? Absolutely not. Who told your father that?" The boy shrugged. "Mrs. Miller was talking about it with some of the board members. Said there is no way someone your age gets that rich legally." Before I could respond, the boy's mother called him back, giving me an apologetic but wary glance. I left the pool shortly after, my mind racing. Brenda was not merely suspicious. She was actively spreading rumors that could damage my reputation and business. During my morning runs that week, I began to notice curtains twitching when I passed certain houses. Neighbors who had initially greeted me warmly now gave brief nods or avoided eye contact entirely. One afternoon, while working from my home office, I observed a car driving slowly past my house multiple times, the driver clearly examining my property. At the mailboxes, conversations halted when I approached. An elderly woman I had helped with her groceries the previous week now crossed to the other side of the street when she saw me coming. The whisper campaign was clearly effective. I began to hear snippets of the rumors from the few neighbors who still spoke to me. According to community gossip, I was variously a trust fund kid lying about my success, a front for an overseas criminal enterprise, a drug dealer using e-commerce as a cover, or engaged in identity theft and credit card fraud. The isolation was frustrating, but what truly disturbed me was returning home early from a business meeting to find Brenda herself standing at the edge of my property. She was holding her phone up, clearly photographing my home and car from multiple angles. When our eyes met, she did not even pretend to be embarrassed or fabricate an excuse. Instead, she raised her chin defiantly before walking away at a measured pace. That evening, I received an email from a potential business partner canceling our upcoming meeting. The message cited concerns about company associations, without further explanation. I had mentioned living in Oakwood Estates during our previous conversation. As it possible, the rumors had spread beyond the neighborhood. Another white envelope appeared on my door the following day. This one contained a friendly reminder, about restrictions on business visitors to residential properties, and noted multiple reports of cars stopping at my address. The only visitors I had received were food deliveries and a single business colleague who had dropped off some documents. The psychological toll of being treated like a criminal in my own community began to wear on me. I found myself parking the Rolls-Royce in the garage rather than the driveway, avoiding community spaces, and second-guessing every interaction. This was not how I had imagined enjoying the success I had worked so hard to achieve. The final straw came when I received a call from my mother in Ohio. "Alex, is everything okay?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "Yes, why?" "I received a strange call today from someone claiming to be from your homeowners association. A woman named Brenda. She was asking about our financial situation, whether we had given you money for your business or car. She implied you might be involved in something illegal." My hand tightened around the phone. "She called you. That is completely inappropriate." "I told her you built your business yourself and hung up," my mother assured me. "But should we be worried? Are you in some kind of trouble?" "No, Mom. This is harassment from the HOA president who cannot believe someone my age could be successful legitimately." After calming my parents, I sat at my dining room table, staring at the growing collection of HOA notices and thinly veiled threats. This had escalated beyond petty jealousy into something potentially damaging to my reputation, business, and peace of mind. Brenda's campaign had moved from passive-aggressive comments to active investigation of my personal life and contacting my family. I opened my laptop and began researching my legal rights as a homeowner. It was time to fight back against this harassment. I would not be driven from my home or forced to defend my legitimacy based on age prejudice and suspicion. The HOA meeting on the 15th would not go the way Brenda Miller expected. I was done being defensive. My dining room transformed into a war room over the next few days. I spread the HOA bylaws, community charter, and property covenant across the table, highlighting relevant sections with color-coded markers. The more I researched, the more confident I became that Brenda had overstepped her authority. Section 7.3 of the covenant, which she cited in her violation notice, referred to maintaining aesthetic standards for visible property features. The specific language restricted commercial vehicles, recreational vehicles, boats, and vehicles in disrepair. Nowhere did it mention luxury vehicles or place restrictions based on the cost or brand of personal vehicles. Section 4.2, regarding home-based businesses, prohibited activities that created excessive traffic, noise, or visible inventory. My occasional work-from-home days involved no external signs of business activity. Her interpretation of these rules was clearly stretched beyond their intent. I scheduled a consultation with Marissa Chen, a real estate attorney specializing in HOA disputes. Her office was in a sleek downtown building, her credentials impressive. No relation to me despite the shared surname, she examined my documents with professional interest. "This is textbook harassment," she concluded after reviewing the notices and hearing my account of events. "The HOA has no grounds to restrict what kind of car you own, nor can they demand financial disclosures about how you afforded it." "What about the rumors she is spreading? She called my parents in Ohio." Marissa frowned, making notes. "That crosses into potential defamation territory, especially the criminal allegations. Have you documented these incidents?" "Some of them. I have the notices, emails, and the date she called my parents." "Start keeping a detailed log of every interaction. Dates, times, witnesses if possible. and install security cameras if you do not already have them. I followed her advice, setting up a comprehensive security system that captured both my property and the street in front of my house. The footage quickly proved valuable. Over the next week, I documented Brenda driving by my house 17 times, stopping to take photos on 3 separate occasions, and approaching delivery drivers once to question them about their business at my address. More concerning were the patterns I uncovered through careful conversations with neighbors who seemed less influenced by the rumors. Margaret Johnson, who had brought the welcome basket, revealed over coffee that she had initially been hesitant to befriend me because Brenda warned everyone you might be running a criminal enterprise. She does this periodically, Margaret explained uncomfortably. Find someone who does not fit her idea of who belongs here and makes their life difficult. Has she targeted others before me? I asked. Margaret nodded slowly. Dr. Winters on Oakwood Circle. He collects vintage cars, has about 6 of them. Brenda tried to force him to keep them all in garages, claiming they lowered property values. And the young family on Pine Street with 3 children. She harassed them about their basketball hoop for months until they finally moved. This information led me to visit Dr. Winters, a retired cardiologist in his 70s. He was initially reserved, but opened up when I explained my situation. She made my life hell for nearly a year, he confirmed, showing me his collection of pristine classic cars. Claimed my 1965 Mustang was an eyesore. Ridiculous. Eventually, the board overruled her, but not before she had half the neighborhood thinking I was violating regulations. I located the family who had moved from Pine Street through social media. They agreed to provide a written statement about their experience with Brenda, describing how she had issued multiple violations for their children's toys being visible in the yard, and eventually claimed their basketball hoop violated height restrictions, a rule that did not exist in the actual covenant. My security cameras captured more concerning behavior. Twice, Brenda was recorded attempting to peer through my windows when she thought I was not home. Once, she approached a FedEx driver delivering a package to my door, engaging him in conversation while pointing at my house. The evidence mounted day by day. My attorney advised me to compile everything for the upcoming HOA meeting. Present your case calmly and factually, she recommended. The board members who are not under Brenda's influence will recognize this as harassment. 2 days before the meeting, I received an unexpected ally. Thomas Williams, the HOA vice president, contacted me requesting a private conversation. We met at a coffee shop outside the neighborhood. I want you to know that not all board members share Brenda's concerns, he said cautiously. Some of us have questioned her fixation on your vehicle and business. Why has no one stopped her? I asked. Thomas sighed. Brenda has been president for 7 years. She knows the rules inside and out and has built a loyal following among certain residents. But this situation with you has gone too far. The call to your parents was unauthorized and inappropriate. He offered to review my evidence before the meeting and suggested I prepare a calm, factual presentation focused on the actual covenant rules rather than personal grievances. The night before the meeting, I organized my materials meticulously, printed photos from security footage showing Brenda's surveillance of my property, testimony from Dr. Winters and the former residents, copies of the HOA regulations with relevant sections highlighted, documentation of my business legitimacy, and a timeline of harassment incidents. I rehearsed my presentation multiple times, focusing on maintaining a professional tone regardless of provocation. This was not merely about defending my right to own a luxury car. It had become about standing against prejudice and abuse of power. As I reviewed my materials one final time, a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. The meeting would either resolve the situation or escalate it to legal action. Either way, the community would witness the truth about Brenda's campaign against me, and I would no longer be silently accepting her harassment. The community center buzzed with unusual attendance for a quarterly HOA meeting. Typically, according to Thomas, these gatherings attracted only the board members and perhaps a dozen interested residents. Tonight, nearly 60 people filled the room, occupying every folding chair with latecomers standing along the walls. My presentation materials were arranged neatly in a portfolio beside me. I had dressed formally: charcoal suit, light blue shirt, conservative tie, projecting professionalism rather than the flashy image Brenda had tried to assign to me. I noticed her watching my entrance, her expression unreadable as she conferred with two other board members at the front table. The meeting began promptly at 7:00 p.m. with standard procedure: approval of previous minutes, treasurer's report, landscape committee updates. The tension in the room grew as these routine matters concluded. Everyone knew why attendance had swelled beyond normal capacity. Next on our agenda, Thomas announced, consulting the meeting schedule, we have a discussion regarding concerns about aesthetic standards compliance and residential business activities at 427 Magnolia Drive. My address. Brenda rose and moved to the podium with practiced authority. Her presentation was polished, clearly rehearsed, and delivered with the confidence of someone accustomed to having her word accepted without question. As many of You know, we have always prided ourselves on maintaining certain standards in Oakwood Estates, she began, her voice carrying throughout the room. Our covenant exists to preserve property values and community character. She clicked a remote, displaying a photo of my Rolls Royce parked in my driveway on the projection screen. Whispers rippled through the audience. This vehicle, while certainly impressive, raises several concerns, she continued. First is the matter of community aesthetic standards. Our neighborhood has always valued tasteful understatement rather than ostentatious displays. She clicked through several more photos, all taken without my permission, showing different angles of my car and house. More concerning, however, are the unusual business activities potentially being conducted from this residential property. We have observed irregular visitor patterns, package deliveries, and work-from-home behaviors that may violate Section 4.2 of our covenant. The room temperature seemed to drop when she directly addressed the elephant in the room. Finally, there is the question that many residents have privately raised. How does someone barely out of college afford a $100,000 car without family money or activities that might bring unwanted attention to our community? As board president, I have a responsibility to investigate potential covenant violations and ensure all residents comply with our standards. Her presentation continued for several more minutes, masterfully implying wrongdoing without making direct accusations that could be considered defamatory. She displayed graphs showing supposed increased traffic on my street, cited neighbor concerns about my lifestyle, and repeatedly emphasized the importance of community safety and values. When she concluded, Thomas called my name. "Mr. Chen, you have requested time to respond to these concerns." My heart pounded as I approached the podium, but my voice remained steady. I placed my materials carefully, arranging them in the order I had practiced. "Thank you for the opportunity to address these issues," I began, making eye contact with various board members and residents. I would like to start by clarifying some factual matters regarding the HOA covenant and my compliance with it. I displayed the actual text of Section 7.3, highlighting the specific language. As you can see, our covenant restricts commercial vehicles, recreational vehicles, and vehicles in disrepair. It contains no provisions regarding luxury vehicles, vehicle cost, or brand restrictions. My personal vehicle, regardless of its value, is in full compliance with existing regulations. Murmurs spread through the audience as I moved to my next point, displaying my business credentials, revenue documentation, and vehicle ownership paperwork. Regarding concerns about my ability to afford my car, I founded my e-commerce business during my sophomore year of college. The company now employs 27 people, maintains office space downtown, and generated over $12 million in revenue last year. All of this is publicly verifiable information. I clicked to display screenshots from my company website, press coverage, and business registration documents. As for alleged business activities conducted from my home, I occasionally work from home, as do many residents in professional fields. This involves no signage, client visits, or other external indications of business activity prohibited by Section 4.2. The energy in the room shifted perceptibly as I moved to the most damning evidence. I displayed timeline-marked security footage showing Brenda repeatedly photographing my property, approaching delivery persons, and attempting to look through my windows. What I have experienced is not covenant enforcement but targeted harassment. Mrs. Miller has spread unfounded rumors about criminal activity, contacted my family in Ohio with invasive questions, and conducted surveillance of my property without authorization. Gasps and whispers erupted when I played the audio recording of my mother describing Brenda's call. I am not the first resident to experience this treatment, I continued, introducing statements from Dr. Winters and the former residents from Pine Street. The mood shifted palpably when Dr. Winters himself stood up from his seat. "If I may," the elderly doctor said, his distinguished voice commanding attention. "I experienced similar targeting from Mrs. Miller over my classic car collection. There appears to be a pattern of selective enforcement and harassment." One by one, other residents shared similar stories. A family targeted for their holiday decorations. A retired teacher questioned about tutoring students in her home. A couple harassed about their garden design. Each account built upon the previous, creating a comprehensive picture of Brenda's pattern of overreach and intimidation. The board members exchanged uncomfort, able glances throughout these testimonies. Thomas cleared his throat after the last speaker concluded. "In light of this information, the board will deliberate briefly," he announced, gesturing for the other members to join him in the adjacent room. They returned after 15 minutes of muffled discussion. Thomas approached the podium while Brenda remained seated, her posture rigid and face flushed. "The board has reached a decision," Thomas announced. "All complaints against Mr. Chen regarding his vehicle and alleged business activities are dismissed due to lack of substantiation and absence of actual covenant violations. Additionally, the board calls for a special meeting next week to review HOA leadership conduct and complaint procedures." The implication was clear. Brenda sat motionless as Thomas adjourned the meeting, her usual authority visibly diminished as residents approached.